CHAPPiE is a 2015 sci-fi action film about an autonomous police android in a crime-riddled Johannesburg that, after being damaged, has an artificial intelligence installed that mimics the human mind and becomes CHAPPiE. The film received fairly mixed reviews. Some loved it, some hated it, but one thing that everyone agreed on was that the visual effects were brilliant. Image Engine, the Embassy, All-In VFX, and Bot VFX handled the digital effects, while Weta Workshop built the practical versions of both CHAPPiE and Moose. Contrary to the norm, where the VFX team would measure and match a physical robot model, in CHAPPiE, the digital version of CHAPPiE was built before the physical one. Weta Workshop had actually been working on CHAPPiE's character design on and off since 2010, basing the design on the director's previous short films Tetraval and Tempbot. Once they had overall designs approved, Weta sent them to Image Engine, who then blocked out the models and began working on the finer details. The team really wanted CHAPPiE to look and feel like a real robot, so they paid special attention to the rigging, making sure they found out how far each joint could move and ensuring that CHAPPiE had a full range of movement, without cheating and using ball joints or allowing parts to crash into one another as long as they weren't seen. Once Image Engine was happy with the design and range of movement, they worked with Weta Workshop to create files suitable for 3D printing. Weta then used a Projet and an Eden printer for the smaller parts and their own home-built 3D printers for the larger ones. Almost every part of the robot was 3D printed, and a total of 19 full robots were built. Throughout the film, CHAPPiE suffers different levels of damage. He gets shot, spray painted, firebombed, and even blinged out. So each of these 19 practical robots were painted and damaged in different ways. And then Image Engine applied these changes to the digital versions. The practical versions were invaluable, not only because they allowed the team to physically damage them, see the true result of the damage, and then transfer it to their digital versions, they also allowed the team to measure the grey levels of the robots. Grey levels are values from 0 to 255 and indicate the brightness of a pixel. These levels could then be measured against the grey levels of the grey suit worn by the actor playing CHAPPiE. Image Engine didn't use motion capture for this film. Instead, the actor playing CHAPPiE wore a grey suit with tracking markers and various chest and shoulder pieces to bulk him out and provide accurate contact points. Then, using rotomotion, which is a technique for animating 3D on top of an actor, matching it frame by frame to the live-action plate, all of CHAPPiE's movements were 100% keyframed, a painstaking and laborious process which in some cases was straightforward and in others involved recreating actors or moving set pieces. In addition to hand animating CHAPPiE, the team also had to use different shaders, textures, and arm and chest and head pieces depending on what scene of the movie it was and the level of damage CHAPPiE had received. In order to streamline this process, Image Engine created CHAPPiE as one main asset in Maya. Every shader, texture, model, and rig adjustment for every change CHAPPiE went through rode along with it. Then, by using Shotgun and their own internal database called Jabuka, they could automatically toggle on and off the different configuration files that would put CHAPPiE in the appropriate state of any given time and shot. They also used this technique to streamline CHAPPiE's lip syncing and to ensure that his battery level indicator was always at the right level for the specific place in the film's timeline. When watching the film, you can't help but notice how well CHAPPiE sits in every scene. This is mainly because of the way the asset was lit. Typically, the VFX team would have a grey ball, a colour chart, and a HDRI to work from. But for CHAPPiE, they got a lot more. They took dual height HDRIs, which allowed them to triangulate objects and light positions. They also photo-scanned the set locations, which, together with the survey data, allowed them to create a low-res version of the set that lighting artists could then use to set up the scene and environment-based light rigs. They also took HDRIs along the paths of movement. For example, in a scene where CHAPPiE walked through a room, the VFX team would follow the same route through the room, taking multiple HDRIs. This data was then used to recreate the light there was on the physical set and reprojected onto CHAPPiE, allowing him to actually walk through the different light sources that were on the physical set. In total, there were 25 scenes and 70 different environment setups. By creating these base lighting rigs, they streamlined the whole lighting process, allowing lighting artists to concentrate on making aesthetic choices and really fine-tuning every shot. The moose's design was refined by Image Engine and Weta Workshop, but started from a rendered CG model made by the director Neil Blomkamp himself, who actually started his career as a 3D animator. Once they had settled on the design, Weta Workshop started one of the biggest builds it has had to do for a long time, consisting of around 10,000 individual parts. Some parts were cast in urethane, others were steel and aluminum. However, not all materials used on Moose were as conventional as steel and aluminum. For the cooling radiators, Weta found that they couldn't just bend wires to emulate the radiator fins, so instead they used ramen noodles. They took 5 blocks of ramen noodles, painted them black, and then gave them a quick spray of silver. Moose couldn't be inserted into the live-action plates using the same methods as with CHAPPiE, because on the one hand, there isn't an actor who is physically big enough to occupy the same amount of frame as Moose, and on the other hand, Moose had to fly. To overcome these problems, Image Engine used both new school and old school solutions. For the shot where Moose is flying, they used a drone to help with framing and to give something for the actors to react to. For the scenes on the ground, a huge plywood cutout was used to give everyone an idea of Moose's dimensions, and then a VFX crew member stood with a 3-meter pole and a tennis ball on the end during rehearsal to block out Moose's position and give the actors something to use as an eyeline. The intention was for him to be out of shot when the cameras were rolling, but the actors wanted him to stay in for reference, so they ended up having to paint him out in post. Whether you think CHAPPiE is a great film or whether you thought it was a bad film, you have to appreciate the amount of time, skill and attention to detail that the practical and visual effects teams put into this movie. And just for that reason alone, this film is worthy of admiration. Please give us a like if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget the links to the music used in this